Singular rock icon David Bowie poured himself into his art, but he managed to keep his private life private. After his unexpected death in 2016, we learned a lot about what made Bowie tick behind the scenes. David Bowie's final work of art was his death. On his 69th birthday, Bowie released the album Black Star to critical acclaim, but it took 2 days for it to become clear what the album was really about. On January 10, 2016, a statement on Bowie's Facebook page announced that the artist had passed away after an 18-month private battle with cancer. The album, which he'd recorded in secret, took on a whole new meaning as a retrospective examination of Bowie's career and life as he faced its end. The album, well received, instantly became an experimental masterpiece. His collaborator on the album, producer Tony Visconti, described the album to The Guardian as a farewell gift. Bowie and Mick Jagger recorded together just once. In 1985, they covered Martha and the Vandellas' 1964 hit Dancing in the Street. It reached the US Top 10, and it was a #1 smash in the UK. But there's plenty more to the story. Bowie and Jagger were already longtime friends, and according to Bowie's former wife Angela, the two rock icons were briefly romantic in the 70s. But what could have been a high-profile bromance, or more, remained private between the two. Following Bowie's death in 2016, Jagger revealed that they'd remained close, talking over rock star concerns like songwriting and band mechanics, and of course, fashion. Jagger told Rolling Stone, "He'd always look at my clothes labels. When he would see me, he'd give me a hug, and I could feel him going up behind the collar of my shirt to see what I was wearing. He used to copy me sometimes, but he'd be very honest about it." One of Bowie's most notable romantic relationships in the 1970s was with former backup singer Claudia Lanier. Bowie's song Lady Grinning Soul was actually written about Lanier.
She was really great dancer, very hot, beautiful girl.
In 1973, she released her one and only solo album titled Few, but after it failed to sell, she left the music industry. She also left Bowie, and the two didn't speak for decades until in 2014, Bowie saw her in a documentary about backup vocalists 20 feet from stardom.
You made it with Bowie and with Mick.
Well, yes, I probably was notorious in my time.
Long retired, Lanier had begun to write songs again, making plans to record another album. She told the world about it in January 2016, just weeks after Bowie's death, revealing that the project had been his idea and that they'd been collaborating on material for the album together. Lanier told the Daily Mail, "We had this very strange writing relationship. He was writing music, and I was writing lyrics." One of the last texts Bowie sent to anyone was to Lanier, writing, "Send me some lyrics, don't forget."
What do you do? For a living, I mean.
Oh, just visiting.
Bowie's artistry wasn't limited to music. He was also an actor. From the late 1960s until the 2010s, he occasionally took on roles in TV and movie roles, with notable performances in The Man Who Fell to Earth, The Hunger, The Last Temptation of Christ, Labyrinth, The Prestige, and the Twin Peaks franchise. Bowie was choosy about the projects he took on, and it was only after his death that we learned that he'd been considered for a role in Peter Jackson's epic adaptations of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings trilogy. In January 2016, Dominic Monaghan, who portrayed Hobbit Merry in the films, spoke to the Huffington Post about seeing Bowie at a casting office after his own audition for Lord of the Rings, saying, "As I was reading a magazine waiting, David Bowie came in and signed the casting director's little list and went in. And I'm assuming he read for Gandalf. I can't think of anything else he would have read for." According to Vanity Fair, Jackson wanted Bowie to play the Middle-earth wizard, but the singer was too busy. Ultimately, the role went to Sir Ian McKellen. During his lifetime, Bowie invested a fortune in artwork, quietly amassing a collection of more than 400 pieces. Some of the artists he collected included 20th century icons like Damien Hirst and Jean-Michel Basquiat, as well as British modernists including Harold Gilman and Peter Lanyon. His collection also included furniture in the postmodern Memphis style and a section of an altarpiece mural painted by Italian master Tintoretto in the 16th century.
It became an occupation. He was not a Sunday collector.
Following a 10-day viewing period open to the public, Bowie's collection went up for auction conducted in November 2016. The event generated more than $30 million in sales, with a large portion of that figure coming from Bowie's two Basquiats, which he'd bought in 1995 before he played artist icon Andy Warhol in the biopic Basquiat.
You could teach me. Well, I couldn't teach you anything. You're a natural.
In the late 1960s, very early on in his career as a recording artist, Bowie earned extra income through a deal with his music publisher, which gave him songwriting for hire jobs. In 1968, he was tasked with writing an English version of the French pop song Comme d'habitude. He knocked out the assignment, but he wasn't pleased with his work, confessing to ABC Australia, "I wrote some really terrible lyrics. I think it was called Even a Fool Learns to Love." But Bowie figured nobody would ever hear the obscure cut until one day in 1969 when he recognized the melody on the radio. But it wasn't his version. Frank Sinatra was singing a different English translation. Pop singer-songwriter Paul Anka had bought the rights, written new lyrics, and given it to Sinatra. Bowie was so miffed that he decided to write a song as dramatic as My Way in retaliation. That song became the 1973 hit single, Life on Mars. Even a Fool Learns to Love remained unheard for years, only coming to light after his death when it was played for the first time ever on the BBC Radio 4 series, The People's History of Pop. Bowie clearly enjoyed working with other top musicians, as evidenced by his collaborations with Bing Crosby, Queen, and Iggy Pop, among others.
David Bowie, he really appreciates musicianship and other people, and he'll let other people shine, which is one of his gifts.
But he was very selective in his partnerships and frequently said no to artists who wanted to work with him, particularly contemporary rock bands. Perhaps feeling jilted or even embarrassed for asking Bowie in the first place, many of those stars only talked about Bowie's rejection after his death. Dave Grohl performed with Bowie in 1998 and guested on his 2002 LP Heathen. However, Bowie declined Grohl's invitation to work with him on a movie soundtrack cut. Grohl told Playboy, "I thought, maybe I'll have someone else sing, I'll do the music. The next day, I get an email and it says, 'David, I watched the movie and I gotta be honest, it's not my thing.'"
I'm like, "Oh my God, holy crap." He's like, "David Bowie just told me to off." I was like, David Bowie thinks I'm an ass.
The Red Hot Chili Peppers repeatedly asked Bowie to produce their records. He said no every time. And like so many others, it would seem that Bowie didn't care for Coldplay. The band once approached him to appear on a song that had a part tailor-made for what they told NME was a David Bowie-type character. In fact, Coldplay singer Chris Martin personally sent a letter to Bowie explaining the idea, to which Bowie replied, "It's not a very good song, is it?" Coldplay guitarist Will Champion seemed to accept, or at least understand the rejection, saying, "He was very discerning. He wouldn't just put his name to anything." In the days after David Bowie's death, numerous celebrities, artists, musicians, and heads of state offered up their condolences and memories, speaking to the musician's tremendous impact and lasting legacy. Among those who shared their grief and appreciation for Bowie was alt-pop singer Lorde, who, unlike many of his famous well-wishers, actually met the singer. It happened back in 2013, when 16-year-old, newly famous Lorde was at the very beginning of her career. Following her performance at an event honoring actor Tilda Swinton that was sponsored by Vogue, editor Anna Winter introduced Lorde to Bowie. Lorde remembered the moment in a Facebook post, writing, "That night something changed in me. I felt a calmness grow, a sureness. I think in those brief moments, he heralded me into my next new life, an old rock and roll alien angel in a perfect gray suit. I realized everything I'd ever done, or would do from then on, would be done like maybe he was watching. I realized I was proud of my spiky strangeness because he had been proud of his." Between 1977 and 1979, Bowie released 3 progressive, introspective albums influenced by electronic music and experimental German rock, Low, Heroes, and Lodger. These 3 records are known collectively as the Berlin Trilogy after the city where they were conceived and produced with Bowie and Eno. Bowie and Eno only worked together once more, on the 1995 album Outside, but they maintained a very tight friendship over the decades. Eno likened their rapport to that of an old comedy duo, in spite of the physical distance that separated them. After Bowie's death, Eno released a statement saying, "With him living in New York and me in London, our connection was by email. We signed off with invented names. Some of his were Mr. Showbiz, Milton Keynes, Rhoda Borux, and the Duke of Ear." Along with those intimate details about their friendship, Eno also revealed that he and Bowie had considered working together again, writing, "About a year ago, we started talking about Outside, the last album we worked on together. We both liked that album a lot and felt that it had fallen through the cracks. We talked about revisiting it, taking it somewhere new. I was looking forward to that. Sadly, time ran out for Bowie before it happened." The contents of Bowie's last will and testament were publicly revealed in late January 2016, about 3 weeks after his death. The financial disclosures showed that Bowie's estate was worth approximately $100 million, bolstered by a 1990s enterprise called Bowie Bonds, in which individuals could buy shares of the singer's intellectual property. The prime beneficiary was Bowie's wife, model Iman, who was to receive half of her late husband's estate in quarterly installments, along with the deed to the couple's luxury apartment in Manhattan. The remainder was bequeathed mostly evenly to filmmaker Duncan Jones, Bowie's adult son from an earlier marriage, and to Lexi Jones, Bowie and Iman's then teenage daughter. Lexi also received the title to Bowie's country home in New York State, while his longtime personal assistant Corinne Schwab was gifted $2 million. Duncan's childhood nanny, Marion Skeeney, was given $1 million. In the document, Bowie also outlined his funeral requests. He asked that his body be cremated and his remains scattered on Bali. If possible, he wanted the spreading of his ashes to be performed according to Buddhist ceremonial practices.